Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy. Parliamentary colleagues, I stand here today proudly on behalf of the good residents of Central Grand Bahama. And Mr. Deputy, I was very deliberate this morning when I went through my closet. I decided not to wear lime green or olive green or forest green. I deliberately put on my cannabis green suit. As we are, yes, it's a new color now, cannabis green, in support of the bill that we are debating today. Peter Green, yeah, I call it cannabis green. Mr. well, as I look, I'm not the only one. And then when I look at the colors here and the lords to my left, I also see green in the gallery. So again, I know for sure I'm not out of place. But before I get on to discussing the bill, Mr. Deputy, I would also like to echo the sentiments of the member for Garden Hills and others who spoke this morning, and congratulating the Bahamas national basketball team for the stellar job that they did in their attempt at qualifying for the Paris Olympics. I was praying, I was cheering, I was hoping that they would have qualified. I was hoping that there would have been even an avenue where they would have been given a wild card. But all avenues were explored, and at the end of the day, on the national scene, they appeared to come up short, but on the local scene, on our scene, they are nothing less than national heroes. So on their behalf, I would like to congratulate them. And also, the team that will be named tomorrow, I anticipate that we will pick our strongest team. And ahead of time, I want to congratulate the former or the now standing Olympians and the ones that will be added. And they will carry the designation that I proudly carry at the end of my name, OLY. So I look forward to the team being named tomorrow, and in advance, congratulating them on behalf of Central Grand Bahama and, of course, my party. Mr. Deputy, we are here to discuss really a compendium of bills that can change the lives of every single Bahamian. The Cannabis Bill 2024 and the subsequent pieces of legislation that will underpin the ecosystem that goes along with it. The bill seeks to regulate the importation, exportation, cultivation, processing, manufacturing, producing, sales, possession, distribution, and of course, use of cannabis. But along with it, also a whole new system of enforcement and monitoring of the use of this substance. Mr. Deputy, first off, I'd like to say that indeed the Free National Movement is in agreement with this move. And of course, it is a known fact that we laid the foundation. It was our F&M government that stopped kicking the can down the road on this issue and truly sought to take action on cannabis legislation in the Bahamas. We want to set the record straight, Mr. Deputy, so that history does not forget where we stood on this issue. It was during the last F&M administration that the CARICOM Regional Commission on Marijuana came to the Bahamas, as was stated earlier, and hosted a series of consultations to see how Bahamians felt. Facts. Their region-wide review sought to obtain information on the social, economic, health, and legal issues related to marijuana use in the Caribbean. Just a few months later, the committee tabled its finding at CARICOM and recommended the declassification of marijuana as a dangerous drug and the reclassification of it as a controlled substance. CARICOM said they believed the substance could be treated similarly to tobacco and alcohol. It was stated by CARICOM. Stay with me now. 1 month later, an F&M cabinet swiftly approved the establishment of the Bahamas National Commission on Marijuana, so we ourselves could truly codify the feelings of Bahamians on this issue. Since then and now, there have been surveys, there's been reports, opinion pieces, legal viewpoints, religious discussions, several draft versions of legislation on how this would work. All of that work has indeed led to this debate here today. I say this to note that we know this is not something being done in a vacuum, as was stated by Exum and Reagan Island. I believe all of us in here understands the grave shift that could take place with the introduction of this new industry from economic to indeed social. So, Mr. Deputy, we do support it because it was a part of our foundation. The history that they keep trying to rewrite, it's a fact. I believe that this has always been the direction we will go because it is the direction the world has gone. It is time once again for the Bahamas to catch up, Mr. Deputy, with the rest of the world. Mr. Deputy, there are several bills tabled, so I think it is important for Bahamians to understand in totality how these bills will impact them, what they really mean, and how they could benefit from them. And Mr. Deputy, while I'm on the floor, I would like the clock to stop, because what I have to say is important. We're having several discussions going on, Mr. Deputy. I need you to protect me.
Honorable members.
Now, Cooper didn't say, all right, Lewis said, let's start off with the changes to the Dangerous Drug Bill. Dangerous Drugs Amendment Bill 2024, Dangerous Drugs Application Order 2024, Dangerous Drugs Prescription of Minimum Amounts Amendment Rules 2024. These pieces of policy simply seek to remove the inference on Indian hemp or cannabis from the law. In essence, decriminalizing it as a dangerous drug and recommending it as recommended by the CARICOM Commission. Again, we're not doing this in a vacuum. Now, the substance must be reclassified. Here we look at the Cannabis Bill. Cannabis Bill 2024, Cannabis Regulation 2024, Cannabis Medicinal Cannabis and Recognized Jurisdiction Order 2024. Mr. Deputy, these pieces now give power for the substance and in turn give birth to a new industry to be governed under the regulations set out. They also give birth to a Bahamas Cannabis Authority whose functions range from the monitoring and licensing of the industry. Mr. Deputy, this authority, one who I believe must remain, who Lewis believe must remain independent and autonomous from the government, will be guided by the regulations for quality assurance, import and export, religious use, testing, cultivation, retail, and more. Mr. Deputy, we have the substance, the policy, and now we need to find the system to support it and, of course, implement it. Pharmacy Amendment Bill 2024, Hospital and Healthcare Facilities General Amendment Regulation 2024, Health Professional General Amendment, Health Professional Amendment to the First Schedule Order 2024. These bills seek to now establish the industry in practice and merge this new substance into modern medicine and the Bahamian society at large, and this is indeed a big deal. Mr. Deputy, I believe this is truly the most important part of the process. How we seek to integrate our Bahamian society, we must consider every possible outcome. I'll say that again. I believe this is truly the most important part of the process, Mr. Deputy. How we seek to integrate our Bahamian society, we must consider every possible outcome, the good and the bad. The reason this has taken so long to get to this point is because we know we cannot afford to get any part of this wrong. We must get it right the first time. These bills, I believe, is in the simplest form, attempt to establish a framework for a cannabis dispensary to exist and for people who will essentially run those businesses. Mr. Deputy, in essence, the bills will blend the system we have now and create a newer one that can coexist with cannabis as a substance. But we all know change never comes easy, Mr. Deputy and colleagues, at least not without some serious growing pains. Mr. Deputy, as was stated earlier by St. Barnabas, I understand that the Bahamas Pharmaceutical Association do not agree with how these bills create an equal system between pharmacies, trained and qualified pharmacists, and dispensaries. Like I said, we must consider everything. I agree with them in their advocacy for proper training for the medical community in the management of cannabis as a medicine. And I understand the argument in creating, in a sense, overnight professionals. Are we doing that when we allow those persons who are untrained to act as dispensers? Their position is that only qualified and licensed pharmacists are to handle and dispense controlled drugs, and there should be no place in law for a dispenser. You know, someone jokingly said to me today, can a drug dealer in the street now consider himself a dispenser? I don't think so. But again, it's a question that was asked. One of the concerns, I guess, can you say that again, louder? So the bush doctor. Well, I mean, if you consider him a dispenser, because it's not clearly defined. One of the concerns raised, Mr. Deputy, is that there will only be e-prescriptions for persons suffering from any disease that will need treatment by cannabis, any medical illness. There will be a central data point, database, where all of the information will be collected, a master file. The concern is, how safe will that data be? How secure will that data be? Is it possible for someone to hack into that system and get personal information? Because again, it's not written on paper. It's not filed away in some storage cabinet. It is electronically monitored. And the question is asked, are we sure that it's going to be safe, it's going to be secure? And I'm sure with our digital prowess these days and cybersecurity, I'm convinced that it will be. But again, the question was asked, how risky is it? How safe is it? And we must put the questions out there. We must pay attention to ensuring that the confidentiality of those persons who will be listed in one electronic database is protected. The question was posed to me. I put it on the floor. Mr. Deputy, whatever route is implemented, I think we must underscore how important proper training and licensing is needed in this new industry. Mr. Deputy, I'd even go as far as implementing background checks. Once again, we must consider every angle in this infancy stage. And again, an entrepreneur asked me this morning, well, if someone is allowed to use it as a business owner, do I now subject him to drug testing? Do I have to hire him if he have legal reasons to use the cannabis? Again, questions that we in here need to be able to consider and answer intelligently. And lastly, Mr. Deputy, we cannot forget that there are people that have been significantly impacted, as was stated earlier, by the criminalization of the substance. People who have been convicted of using the plant for religious, for personal, and of course for medical reasons. Rehabilitation of offenders, expunging of records, Indian hemp offenses, Order 2024. Spoke to that earlier. This criminal element, Mr. Deputy, of the substance has caused unnecessary confrontation between police and citizens and has created a wave, and we must face the fact, a wave of underground criminal activities in our country. Will this underground element go away? Reforming our marijuana laws and righting the wrongs of how we treat people with convictions of possession of small amounts was always a matter of social justice and fairness for the FNM administration. As such, it was our former government that introduced laws to do just that. Mr. Deputy, this is also on Bahamian record, so I will move on. Mr. Deputy, getting near to the end of my presentation, as we seek to outline how our country will handle this, like the dozen of other countries around the world have done by creating avenues for medicinal and recreational use, I think it is also significantly important that in all our initial phase of implementation, we consider the Bahamianization aspect of it. Bahamianization of this should be our primary focus. How do we ensure that Bahamians are empowered and have the opportunity to thrive in this industry. How do we ensure it? How do we ensure that they thrive? That this is of major economic value to Bahamians first. How do we make sure that this does not become another gambling scam where a few get rich and the majority of Bahamians are left waiting for their big payout? How do we make sure that this does not become another source of abuse for the Bahamian public and social concern for the public? These are questions I'm putting on the floor. We are the ones, the legislators. We need to be able to answer those questions. All of these things must also be considered. As I always said, we want to support the New Day government because governments are continuous. But we also always want to make sure that things are done right, because if we're looking at the bigger picture, it's about all of us. Make sure that it's done right the first time. Mr. Deputy, among the concerns we have are with the various licenses that will be given out. If you are going to be allowed to import the raw materials, as well as oils, I want to make sure, or Lewis wants to make sure, that the local market and local cultivators are not disenfranchised by persons importing more than what is grown locally. And I would say that again. If we are going to allow persons to import the raw materials as well as oil, I want to make sure that the local markets and local cultivators are not disenfranchised by persons importing more than they are buying locally. Mr. Deputy, I believe that at some point, and this again is my opinion, that we should phase out importing the raw material. Perhaps have a window, 5 to 10 years, and give Bahamians a chance to raise funds through their outdoor facilities. Everyone have the yard space. Everyone have outdoor space where they can grow. And they can, of course, raise the funds where at some point now they have enough money to construct their own grow houses. Again, Mr. Deputy, the idea is not to have Bahamians disenfranchised. Part of the argument is that in order to get the best yield or consistency, you must have growth houses where it's done in a controlled environment. However, in the Bahamas, most Bahamians don't have the cash flow and the money to construct their own growth houses, and if they're doing it in a less controlled environment. So, Mr. Deputy, like our leader stated, he has gone on record on his support for an industrialized Indian hemp industry. We know, food for thought. We know that in order, and will you come out and patronize? Bring all of Exome and Ragged Island and the rest of Grand Bahama, and let's do it at the farmers market. Make sure we empower our local farmers. You know, we support the orange economy, we support the blue economy. Now it's time for all of us to support the green economy. Mr. Deputy, we know that in order to compete with countries like Jamaica, Canada, the Netherlands, and yes, even America, the Bahamian market should be more diversified. What I'm saying, we should look at ways that Bahamians can be empowered. Industrial hemp, Mr. Deputy and colleagues, has many uses, including paper, textiles, biodegradable plastics, construction materials, health food, and fuel. While we look at medicinal and recreational use, we must also look at the byproducts of the plant, which can also create new opportunities in these industries. Mr. Deputy, there's also an element of the bill where, as was stated earlier, a foreigner can own up to 70%. But if we believe so much in this, why shouldn't we find a way to fund our local Bahamians? Let's give them grants. Let's give them the funding where they can borrow, or they are given the grants where they can build their own grow houses ahead of time. And then, in that way, we can keep all or most of the money right in the Bahamas, right at home. We believe in the industry. We believe in the empowerment of Bahamians. So why not find a way to fund them? They have a viable business plan. They have the land space, but they don't have the cash for the goat houses. Why can't we find a way? put some funds aside where we are given preference over the foreign element. We don't now have to depend on the foreigners to fund our companies. Again, food for thought. Mr. Deputy, governments are continuous. And we see this step as a way forward to continue the foundation the F&M administration has laid. Again, I believe it will have an impact on every facet of our society. And as I close, Mr. Deputy, as always, the official opposition is here to provide bipartisan support for this New Day government. If only they say, as I say, they would listen. I'm continually honored and grateful for the responsibility to be a representative for the good people of Central Grand Bahama. And I can still tell you that in Grand Bahama, all is still not well. We have plenty of work to do. The economy is still suffering. People are crying. They need help. And while some is out there screaming, it's a new day, the majority of Grand Bahamians are crying, Mayday, Mayday, we need help. Cooper said, no, I want to say what Lewis said. What Lewis said about Grand Lucayan, as I said earlier, one of the challenges that I believe we have with the Grand Lucayan property, now that you raise it, and we have to talk about the economy of Grand Bahama, is that I believe both administrations should think about the approach. We have three separate properties. We have three separate properties along that strip. And I believe trying to package it as one unit is one of the challenges that we're having right now. Perhaps consideration should be given to separating those different hotel. You have Memories, you have Manor House, and you have Lighthouse Point as three separate packages, three separate experiences. And in doing so, one investor doesn't have to come with all the money to develop the whole strip. And also in that way, you will not disenfranchise what's going on at Port Lucaya Marketplace. So again, maybe it's being considered. And if it is being considered, if it was a miss on our part, it was a miss. But I'm saying now, perhaps we should consider separating those properties into three separate packages and allowing three separate investors because if you go into Las Vegas, you have hotels in short span, different experience, all interconnected. Let's think about separation of those properties and perhaps a sale would be easier. And of course, you'll have different experiences in the same area of the Grand Lucayan Strip. Once again, Central Grand Bahama, no, once again, no, life is a learning process. Life is a learning process, and I'm not here to bash anyone. As a developer and as an architect and planner, sometimes we look at the whole master plan, we don't look at phasing. But again, perhaps we should look at separating those three properties, look for three different investors, different experience, and of course, our chances of developing the Lucayan Strip may be better. Just food for thought. Once again, Central Grand Bahama stands in support of this bill, all things considered, including the issues that were raised. Mr. Deputy, colleagues, thank you very much.